Hi and welcome to the show. Now I'm sure we've all heard the theory about daughters and fathers having a special relationship, resulting in daddy's girls, demanding, independent, high-maintenance women. But would you know an African daddy's girl if you met her? The daughter who basks in the adoring glow of her father's tender, loving care. Today on the show, we'll be exploring the concept of daddy's girl. Who is she? How do you know how much she's been really influenced by her father? And how does this affect her decision-making in life? We have lots of interesting guests lined up on the show today. Stick around for more. Ahead on the Patricia Show.
I tell my dad first, everything, anything. He's the first one, then she'll be second.
Or at least a male name after her name. I have none.
I fell in love with David because he's a lot like my dad.
Your father is the first male that you really have a close relationship.
Yes.
And that person becomes a role model. A template, if you like,
Yes.
for what you expect in relationships later in life.
Welcome back. The idea of a daddy's girl is common in the Western world, but does it really apply in an African setting? Now, in African culture, most families look forward to the birth of sons to perpetuate the family name. So just what would the African daddy's girl look like? And does she exist? To explore this idea further, we're now joined by psychologist Dr. Chris Hart, who will tell us about the Electra complex and more about this concept. Welcome to the show. Okay, so Dr. Hart, what is this Electra complex? Can you just explain that one?
Okay, now, it all starts with the fact that the relationship between daughters and their fathers is enormously important, and it's been a subject of interest for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
And the first man who really studied it was, of course, Freud. But it was 70 odd years ago. Now he came up with this idea of how important that relationship is. And to be truthful, I don't want to describe how he put it, because that's now so dated.
Yeah.
It was all about a time when frankly, men were hugely the most powerful in his community, and he did not understand that that was happening. So these young ladies were all admiring their fathers enormously, and that's what he confused with all sorts of things to do with sexuality. And in fact, the whole area of this investigation got thoroughly trashed by the feminists in the 60s and 70s.
As it would, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. They just tore it to shreds.
Yeah.
And so, frankly, people don't often talk about it very much now. Unfortunately, there was a bit of a side effect from that 70s period. It was that the role of fathers was devalued.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the time when people used to say it's okay to be a single mother and it really doesn't make any difference. Now, 30 years later, we've seen a whole generation grow up without fathers around or without the influence of a male role model. And it's been very damaging. Both boys and girls have suffered enormously by that. So now, of course, there's a bit of a revision going on. That we realise that actually we should have fathers in people's lives.
Yeah.
And if it's absolutely impossible, we must have role models for them
At
to
least,
follow.
yeah.
Hugely important.
Okay, brilliant. Just what is a daddy's girl? Can you explain that for us and what it means?
Well, they come in several flavours. There is the adoring one. There's the one whose father is absolutely delightful to her the whole time. He protects her against everything.
Yeah.
He's the little girl who's becoming a princess.
Okay.
There's the rebel. If the father is the sort of permissive type who lets his daughter get away with
anything.
But at the same time teaches her football and climbing trees and all the rest of it. She turns into the rebellious, very headstrong young lady. And then there's the one who idealises her father. And that's the one that's common in a situation where her father's not really there at all. Maybe an absent father or a father who's not around.
Yes, you've created this picture
She's
within
created,
her mind.
yes.
And this is who my dad is, but it may not necessarily be true.
Yeah.
Okay.
So those are the three flavours of daddy's girls.
And how does this translate into the African setting?
Well, it is universal, pretty much universal. You do find the influence of fathers is very heavy on young girls, sort of 4 or 5 years old, all around the world. And so although we say this is a very male-dominated culture, nevertheless, girls do take their fathers as a role model.
Yeah.
And so they do develop these approaches to life. These are a little abnormal, I have to say. Most people are a little more level-headed. But, you know, these are the extremes.
Now, when you say abnormal, what does that mean? It's like, okay, you've got this ideal picture of who your father is.
Yeah.
And then what? Does that, is that like how you then go and look for someone who's similar to him, or what is that?
Okay, yes. It is a very universal concept. It happens everywhere. And it's really based on the fact that your father is the first male that you really have a close relationship
Yes.
with, albeit you're 3, 4, 5 at the time.
Yeah.
And that person becomes a role model. A template, if you like,
Yes.
for what you expect in relationships later in life.
Exactly.
And so depending on the nature of the relationship you have with your father, it's going to set you off down a particular path in terms of relationships with grown-ups later on.
Okay, so give us 3 signs of a typical daddy's girl. 3 signs. What would they go out there and do?
Right. Well, I'm afraid the first sign you should look for, imagine you're dating and you're coming across these ladies, is that they are not very successful at dating. They tend to have lots of dates that go wrong. They tend to have relationships that, they're serial relationships. They have the same relationship all over again. And when you look at them, you can see that the nature of the relationships they're having are not very successful for them. They're not appropriate for them. So that's the first and biggest sign.
Okay.
The second sign is the nature of the person, you know, the princess who literally can't do anything for herself, who picks boys to date who will do everything for her. They're usually wimps, you know, they're the sort of guy who'll do anything for this guy.
Yeah.
You see the sort of style.
You cringe at that, yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So if you see things like that, then you're probably up against a daddy's girl.
Yeah.
Or if you're being set on a pedestal, if you get this feeling that you can't do anything right because somehow she's comparing you against somebody.
About something, someone.
Yes, that you are, obviously it's not you, and you're not being compared with a real person. You're being compared with this ideal.
With this
father.
ideal.
Yeah. Very
Wow.
tricky. You can imagine that.
Yes,
can't
it
you?
is. Yes, I am imagining it in my head, and I'm thinking, what am I? Am I?
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking
Yeah,
about as well.
yeah.
But
people marry a girl like that and then can't understand why they keep having these problems in the relationship.
Yeah.
And often it's because you're supposed to be perfect. He was. Why aren't you?
yeah.
You can see that can be quite destructive.
Yeah, and of course, as women get older, you may have had this ideal picture of who your father is, but you've got to break it down a little and bring it into a more realistic context before you can move away from that. Is that what would probably
Yes,
be?
strangely enough, the best thing that can ever happen to a girl like that is for her to sit and think about it, to realise what's going on.
Yeah.
The moment you realise what's going on, chances are you're going to start putting it right. But most people don't have that thought. You know, they just simply go through life on tracks, and they keep chucking these boyfriends out and all the rest of it. And
Yeah,
you can't see
yeah.
what's going on.
Yeah. Okay, insightful stuff. Thank you. Thank you very much,
Pleasure.
Dr. Chris. Well, so far we've gotten a description of a daddy's girl. Would you recognise this woman if you worked with her or if you are her? We'll be right back.
So the one who scores the highest is the one I picked. It was like that.
Great.
Simple things. You don't keep your word. My dad keeps his word every single time. He's like Superman. Yeah. He's always there like a button.
Welcome back to the show. And today's show is demystifying the daddy's girl concept. We're now joined by 2 ladies, one who terms herself the ultimate daddy's girl, and another who grew up with an absent father. And this made her look at everything from a completely different perspective. Rebecca and Josephine, welcome to the show. Let's start off with you, Josephine. You didn't know your father as you were growing up. And then something prompted you to actually look for him, isn't it?
Yeah.
What was that?
I was always curious, like when you go to school. First of all, my names. I had 2 names. Most of the other girls had 3 names. I was in a girls' school, so I would want to know, why do I have 2 names? Everybody else has 3 names. Or at least a male name after her name. I have none. So that prompted me to ask my mom, but I wasn't very comfortable. I knew she wasn't comfortable talking about it.
Yeah, you tried talking to her about it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Until much later, when I was 6 standard 5, then I would talk to her. But I would talk to her on phone. I wouldn't face her and ask her. Because I knew, she wasn't comfortable. So at some point, she told me about him and that he is married. They didn't get married. When they had me, she had me when she was pretty young.
Okay.
So, and I got to meet him, but I've only met him a few times thereafter. That's how I met him.
Yeah. And how did that, what happened when you met? Was it,
First of all,
what was it like? How did you feel?
These are strangers, first and foremost.
Yeah.
You don't see him every other day, so it's the way I would meet you. you know.
Really, someone you don't know.
Yeah, he has another family, so that hit me then. He can't be part of. Okay, actually, I really hoped to get back with my mom and we could have a normal family. But at that point when I met him, and he has another family who he would not even introduce me to, that made me realize actually, the reality hit me at that point. That they have moved on, everyone has their own life, and that's how things are. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you relate to him? Do you speak to him at all now?
A few times we do.
Or did you just close shop at that point?
No. We talk, but not often. When there are serious issues like my wedding, I invited him. And of course he didn't show up, but not so that bad. I'm not used to him, so he was another guest, that just like another guest who didn't show up. It's nothing really so traumatizing.
Yeah.
But I knew when I was growing up, I had to have a family. A family as in we know it, the nuclear family, that was one. I made up my mind, just like I've had to work for my grades, I've had to work for everything else, I have to work for a family. Yeah, and so I sat down and worked for it. As Dr. Chris said, I didn't have someone to compare, to measure up with. So I sat down and wrote down some 20 qualities that I think I want in a person.
Great.
There were actually 20, and I gave the marks 5% to make 100. And there was these guys I was dating, not serious, but can I date this guy? Can I date this one? And I would put the points. This one here, he scores 5, this one 3.
Yeah.
So the one who scores the highest is the one I picked. It was like that.
Great. So this became your template.
Yeah.
These 20,
Yeah.
descriptions or characteristics became your template.
Yeah.
Wow. Interesting. But okay, we'll come back to you in a minute, Josephine. Okay, so Rebecca, what's your relationship with your father like?
It's the best. He's everything. He's my life savior.
Now, when you say the best, what does that mean? How does that translate as?
We talk about everything. He tells me, he gives the most sober advice. He tells me stuff, everything about about life. Gives me advice, school-wise, career, friends, financial. Most of the things I look up to him. I keep asking him for advice, keep texting him, calling him. We talk every single day.
Okay, I'm assuming you don't live with your parents at the moment.
I don't live with
But
them.
okay, has this always been the case as you were growing up?
Yes, it has. He's always been there. I don't know anything else.
And what about your mum?
She's
Hello,
still,
there's Mum.
she's there.
Yeah.
We're friends with her too. But
What's the difference then between?
the difference, I don't know. I don't talk to her as much. My sisters do. My brother does. But personally, I prefer talking to my dad. And eventually he's going to tell her everything that we talk about.
Yeah.
All the advice. But still, I don't know. I just prefer talking to him. Always. About everything. Yeah.
Wow. Now, you've met women from all walks of life. How do you compare? How do you see yourself comparing to these other women?
Most of them talk to their mothers, my friends especially. They wonder how I can tell my dad. I have a list of boyfriends. I give him the names and like, okay, describe all of them. Like, this one looks like, yeah. We talk about.
Really?
Yes, we do. And there's one time I used to have an anklet, a beaded anklet. Then I told him. He asked me what's that. I told him it's a sign of my purity. Then he says, okay. I told him when you see it's off, yeah, and you see a silver one, then that means, yeah, no more purity. Then he's like, okay, interesting. So one time he saw it, there was nothing. Then he asked me, where's the beaded anklet? Because definitely Then I told him, well, it's because of work. That's the truth. Work, and I need to be in skirt sometimes. So I told him, just prefer corporate look, and yeah. But don't worry, everything's fine. It's like, okay. So we talk.
So you talk about such things with him?
We do.
And not your mum?
Well, I tell her some things, though sometimes she thinks she's not involved, yeah?
Yeah.
But she is. She's my mother at the end of the day.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. But have you ever, has there been a sense of jealousy maybe? I don't know. With your mom? Has that translated in any way? And
I don't know. But she tries.
She tries to be closer to you?
We're close. But
you
I tell
don't
my
tell
dad.
her.
I tell my dad first. Everything, anything. He's the first one. Then she'll be second. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you say that you take more risks, as a child or even now as an adult, because of this relationship with your father?
I guess so, because he's an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Has his own schools, and with that I look up to him. I also have said my own thing. That's a risk. He left his job. I have not left mine yet, but eventually that's a risk. I'd take a risk to get involved in what I'm doing, in what I'd prefer doing.
But do you also see him as a safety net? Just in case things went wrong, you know that daddy's there and daddy's going to help me out.
Yeah, he's my lifesaver.
He is your
Anytime,
lifesaver?
Yeah. That's what we call him, everyone in the family.
Everyone in the family. So he has this kind of relationship with all your siblings, but you are the one that tends to be closer to him.
Yes.
You love it, don't you? You love the relationship that you have with him.
I do.
Yeah, yeah.
Actually, he knows I'm here. Then I told him, I'm talking about you. Then he went like, I will sue you because of talking about me without permission. Then I told him, it's okay.
Yeah. So what impact would you say that, you know, that your relationship with your father has had on your social life? Has there been an impact?
Yes. He's, yeah, there is
In
socially, everything, friends and everything.
Yeah.
Yes. I ask him, when I'm going like maybe out, I'll tell him I'm going out on maybe a date or out to party. I tell him that. I have this new friend. Then he asks about them. So basically, he tells me what to do, who to avoid, when to do it. And we always, after a date, we talk about it. So do you think you'll have another date? Then I'll tell him.
Wow.
Well, perhaps, I'm not sure. So,
Okay.
yeah.
I mean, now, you know, I'd asked you the question earlier about, do you think you compare with how do you compare with other women that you've met? You know, we've got Josephine sitting right here, who came up with her, I just love that, her 20 criteria that, you know, would guide her to finding the right partner. You know, you're married now, yes?
Yes, I am, yeah.
What do you think of that?
Good step. Yes, very good.
Yeah.
On my side about men, it's another big story, different story.
Really?
I don't know. He's always been there. I've said that, yeah. And if a man tells me I'm going to call you, he doesn't. That's now off. Simple things. You don't keep your word. My dad keeps his word every single time. He's like Superman. Yeah, he is always there, like a button. Yeah. So it's a good step you did that.
Yeah. But I think I'm just wondering about this. This is what I'm toying with in my own mind, that perhaps you not having a father there when you were growing up, do you feel it's made you, well, perspective-wise, look at things in a different way, perhaps in a more, I don't have a safety net, so I've got to get on with what it is that I need to get on with.
That's how I look at things. If I want anything, I have to work for it. Whatever it is, and no matter, you know, the things people think, they just come. Nothing comes for me. I work for it. Everything, everything.
Do you feel like things just kind of fall on your lap, Rebecca?
Yeah.
You do?
Pretty much. My friends say I'm lucky.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And what about the financial aspects? You work.
Yeah, first of all, I have no inheritance. Well, my mom has her property.
Most people don't. But yeah.
But I'm not looking after it because I have siblings. So if I want to have good retirement, I have to work for it. I have to start saving. If I want to have a house, I have to have one. I mean, I have to work for it. I have to strategize. So, yeah. That's me. That's my life. Yeah.
And do you need something?
Yeah. And any investment, anything I'm putting my money on, I have to call him and ask him, what do you think?
What do you think of this?
The smallest thing, a chama, anything.
But just going back to you, Josephine, do you talk to your mum about different things, dating and finances, how to manage, etc., etc.?
We used to talk. Right now we are not in very good terms, but we used to talk. And we were the best of friends, but when I wanted to move on, to move out of home after working for like 2 years, to start my own life, she was holding on. I look back and realize maybe it's because I was her only pillar. We would talk, she would consult. So I feel like she felt she was losing me, but I had to move on, so we clashed a bit. But yes, we would talk about relationships, we would talk openly. But finances, I felt as though she was trying to be controlling, so I broke off and I prefer doing my own things. I do research, just taking my own risks. That's easier for me.
Yeah.
Because I think she was afraid for me, maybe, you know, things wouldn't be so
Yes,
easy and
yeah.
all, but I'm an adult. I have to be responsible, make decisions, make mistakes, learn from them. Growing up is about making decisions and taking the consequences. Good or bad?
Wow, self-sufficient.
Not really. I need
Yeah, I
other
mean,
people, but
yeah,
I'm strong.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. What would you say in response to what Josephine's just said? Not trying to change you in anything, but just from what you've heard, what do you think? What are your thoughts?
I think, well, it's a very good, yeah, but I can't compare myself to you.
Yeah, you can't.
Yeah, I
no.
can't. I can't imagine making some decisions without asking my dad first.
Mm.
Yeah.
And how does it make you
Feel.
listening to her story?
I consider myself lucky because things have not gone so bad for me in as much as I'm a risk taker. I pray and I also try to cushion myself, so things have not been very bad. But I'm happy for her. She's had what I didn't have. Yeah, but we are both here and life is fine. And the most recent risk I ever took was raising a baby. I have an 11-week boy.
Wow,
I've never held a baby before. I've never changed a diaper, but today I'm good.
You're good.
Yeah.
Pleasure having you both on the show. Rebecca,
you.
Josephine, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. We'll be right back.
I came into that setting knowing that she's very, very tight with her dad.
Yeah.
And for me, I guess I was a bit uneasy because I was thinking, what is the dad expecting of me and what should I do?
And being sensitive to your own past is a very considerable skill. You know, it's not something you can just switch on overnight.
David and Cynthia are a young couple who've been married for less than a year, and she's a daddy's girl. Did David know this before they got married? Is he competing with her father? Has Cynthia had a difficult time adjusting to her new role as wife? We asked them all these questions in their home.
Hi, I'm David Makuyu, and this is my wife, Cynthia.
Makuyu.
Right. We've been married for 1.5 years now. Pressure from my father-in-law, I haven't received any pressure from him. I mean, we had a fantastic relationship. I felt very welcome. All the time that we used to talk, no pressure at all. Of course, you know, there's that thing of taking care of his baby girl, his daddy's little girl, you know, because they were very tight and yeah, there's that expectation. There's one thing that I did to find out how humble she is, you know. When we first started dating, I had a car, a Toyota Corolla, a very nice white car, and I loved it. But I wanted to see how she was going to react to that because she told me about all these stories of her boyfriends having all these big four-wheel drive cars and everything. So when I took her to the car, I watched her. You know, we passed a couple of cars and I know she was like, okay, where's your car? So we got to my car eventually and I just watched her to find out how she was going to react, and she didn't react. You know, you just took it in your stride. So I was like, yeah, cool, I have to marry her.
But for me, a car really doesn't mean much. It wasn't about that machine that he has. My dad taught me it's not about what a man has, but who he is. And I fell in love with David because he's a lot like my dad. I was very close to my dad, so I admired so much about my dad. My dad is down to earth, he's an honest man. And I saw those things in David. And I always, every time I tell my mom I want to get a man who's like my dad, and I used to be like, even half of what my dad is, I'd really want a man like that. So I met David, and he's a lot like him. And probably that's why you get along with my dad so well, because you guys have a lot in common. And that made it easier also for me to because I had my dad's support. It made our relationship, I think, in a way even grow faster, and that's why eventually I even decided to marry you, because I had my dad's approval.
They used to go for long drives together and spend a lot of time together when the family was going out on safari. She has 3 sisters who are behind her, so they'd be in the back seat, and you know, you start chatting and all that stuff, and then eventually it dies down because people start to sleep. But she'd be up with her dad in the front seat, just talking the whole way for hours and hours and hours. You know, so I came into that setting knowing that she's very, very tight to her dad.
Yeah.
And for me, I guess I was a bit uneasy because I was thinking, what is the dad expecting of me and what should I do? But yeah, like I said in the beginning, he didn't give me that pressure. So that was really cool.
The relationship you have with your dad affects the kind of relationship you'll have with a man, and you sort of know exactly what you want, you know, if you have that kind of close relationship. But the difficult place, I think, for me was after when we got married and I went for my honeymoon, and I thought, you know, the picture that you have of honeymoon, it's all bliss and really nice, have your nice holiday somewhere, you're swimming.
Yeah.
But it wasn't that easy for me. The first day was, but the second day I just found myself crying and crying and crying, and I didn't know why. I just felt like something had just been, a part of me had just been cut off, and I really didn't understand what that is. And even when we went back home, I still enjoyed the honeymoon,